Build your wealth generation system. Get after it. Have somebody that can give you third-party correspondence, and then start educating yourself, because based on how our brain is wired, what we focus on will grow. If I'm focused on wealth generation, guess what's going to happen? Byproduct of it, I'm going to generate wealth.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth-building strategies. Discover how to fast-track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Thank you once again for joining another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. I'm your host and your favorite silverback, Sylvania Harrod. And on today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about my belief that freedom is actually a system. And once you understand exactly the tools that are structured inside that system, you can begin to create a different experience for yourself. So, my fellow contrarians, the things that you'll learn if you listen to any episodes is that I try to look at traditional things and see if there's a contrarian approach for it. It was the gift that I was given. And so I had a couple people that came to the house because people reach out at different times. They're friends of mine, whether it's a phone call or it's like one-on-one, because I'm like, if you bring food, I'll be there to give you an hour of my time. So I want to tell you, freedom is a spectrum. So a spectrum means that there's a continuum. It's from the place of like helplessness to feeling like hope. And so that spectrum is created there's many different steps along that journey. But I wanted to really talk to you about having a plan, because one of the things that I've recognized that separates the wealthy from the not is they have a plan. And so most of us think of like financial planners and having those people on the staff and going through. And yes, those are pieces to the puzzle, but I'm here to tell you that the more you understand the plan and the more you help create the plan, the simpler things become. So let's get a little tactical, right? Say, for example, your freedom number, and everybody should have a freedom number. Freedom number is associated as how much is your needs of your outflows. So if you evaluate per month and you say, okay, my needs are things like $6,000. So you look at that and you look at it and you say, okay, this is how much my outflows are. Then you look at it from a self-employment perspective and you say, well, insurance is currently covered by my job and they're paying a majority of it. So I'm going to need to evaluate what quotes are and that yada, yada, yada. So you create your number at $6,000. Now, the journey is to find something that allows you the opportunity to cover that $6,000. And so as you go through that process, what people don't forget to realize is most of us spend the time focusing on the $6,000. What you don't actually focus on is the first $100. That turns into $200. It turns into $300. Because what happens is there's a certain level of impatience, because we were exposed to more people making X amount of dollars. So then it makes us feel like we don't have enough. We're not doing it fast enough. We want to do it quicker. But I'm here to warn you. I have never rushed through something that ended up becoming a better outcome than something I took my time with. Because rushing is when you mess up. It's when you make slip-ups. It's when you like do half-baked things. Because I had a friend who bought a flip home, and they've learned over the span of the last 3 to 4 years that like there were places where they cut corners, and there's a lot of places where they cut corners. And while this beautiful house they acquired and their long-term debt is a certain dollar, they got to have additional expenses as they go through to fix and repair and rebuild some of those items. So I'm here with that information to look at, and let's look at the $6,000. So as you begin to acquire assets, because the key thing I want you to know is that it's not really about, there's a whole frame of thought in the FIRE community of people that they live off of next to nothing. And I'm here to tell you, I ain't doing that shit. I'm trying to live off of the things that support my family. You know, if it was just me living in an apartment, yeah, but that's not the case. You have to evaluate it based upon your current homeostasis. So once you understand current homeostasis, you are now at a place where you can have the ability to go through and recognize what that number looks like. Now, there's you start getting to a point where you recognize, like, do I really need all of the streaming services? How much are we actually using something? That's just maturity as you go through and you begin to lower that number. But I'd much rather spend most of my effort after I get through stasis and figure out what I need, focusing on what is actually going to produce better results for me. So on the basis of just the market, like the stock market, I'm going to go and be like, all right, cool. I'm just going to invest in S&P that produces some type of dividends, put my money at work. If you're gainfully employed, whatever the match is, you take that match, you run with it. And that's just kind of basis because you got free additional cash flow that's being poured into your investment. Run through that. But the most of the things I'm going to spend my time in is on the type of asset I can acquire that's going to produce the necessary cash inflows that I need to cover my $6,000 nut. And there's slower and faster ways of doing it. Faster is business, because a business, you can always get more customers. Like there's so much more leverage you can get in business versus something like real estate. Real estate is a basis where it's consistent and it's more wealth preservation, because what you're doing is you're just taking the depreciation that's associated with that asset and lowering your adjusted gross income. So I look at those two elements. And so in a business, for me personally, I look at that as my wealth generation tool. And then keeping it is about the real estate. So we look at that space. But the thing I want you to know about is I want you to think about like acquiring your first, like going ahead and saying, I want to look at my 401k and recognize like what money can I put into a self-directed IRA? Because the interesting thing that's happening nowadays is that if it's eligible, it's about figuring out if you even have the ability to do that. Because self-directed, I now have the ability to take cash and pour it into certain assets. So figure that out first. If your plan has the ability to do so, and then you start looking at things like what is something that helps me get leverage? Because remember, the wealthy think of leverage in everything. It's how do they leverage their time? How do they leverage other people? How do I leverage the money that I'm already grabbing? Because it's about having a predictable process of what I do with money that comes in. On a previous episode, I shared with y'all, like if I know mentally where money is going to go. Anytime I have a check or anything that's coming in, it's already sorted beforehand because my ADHD self likes shiny things. So guess what I do? I create an account that's only for shiny things, so that I'm not pulling from anything that's going to disrupt my system. It's like, I'd much rather use a spare tire on something else than having to pull the tire off one of my cars. And then all of a sudden it's like going all over the place. So I look at that and I have a system. That system is something that I know is a repeatable process. So let's look at it. If I know that I have $10,000 to put into an asset, I'm going to evaluate what type of assets fits my personality profile. For some people, it's crypto. They want to just keep building crypto and go through. For some people, they're like, to hell with crypto. There's no right or wrong answer. For some, they'll put it in and say, you know what? I want to put it into oil and gas, because guess what? Petroleum is the basis of everything that we use on a daily basis, from this material to the heat that we have in the house to the things we use to drive cars, to the machines that build the electric battery plants, like all of that. So you look at it and you say, oh, cool. The Permian Basin is great at that information. This is why having a guide is so important. It's because as you build your freedom system, you have a process, you have a plan. And with everything on the interwebs of everybody telling you all the different things you can do, all it's going to do is just confuse you and get you to the point of like, what really matches towards what I believe in. And then as you go through that process, my one warning is, do not succumb to lifestyle inflation. I get it. You have more dollars and cents coming in, there's more crap you can buy. America is designed in a way to be a consumer-based society. They want you to go buy the thing and buy the tool, and there's a whole process behind getting you to buy a bunch of dumb shit. So that's why you don't succumb to lifestyle inflation, because you hedge against it by having a plan. And for anybody who needs help with a plan, you know how to find me in the DMs, because we will go through and we'll figure out exactly what structure works best for you, based upon you, and if you're married, your spouse, because you have to be rowing in the same direction. Otherwise, your ass rowing one way, she rowing the other direction, and your damn canoe is going in different directions. Perfect. You need a plan. You need a process. So as you have that plan, the thing I want you to know is that my plan is always designed for one thing and one thing only: autonomy. Because real wealth is about being able to spend time with those on a moment's notice. When my second mom knew she had a week or so left to live, I stopped everything I was doing. I hopped on a plane. I went cross country, and I was just there. My wealth generation system was still running. It was still doing things. And while I had cash that was outlaid at that period of time, my system was building for me the entire time. And that's the real goal, is having that structured system that enables you and moves you closer. But you have to make sure you stop and celebrate those different moments. Because if you don't celebrate $100 of new inflows coming, you damn sure ain't going to celebrate when it's 10,000. Because it's all the numbers are going to be the same. Like, they all feel the same. You're like, whatever, you know? But the key thing is that, do you have meaning in life? Are you building something that's going to supersede yourself? And that's where it becomes fun. So to land the plane in this conversation, you have to have a system. That system will define exactly your next steps, your processes, and the tools you want to go through. And the very easy way to understand that system is just get a grasp of your outflows and inflows. Do an audit of those outflows and see what you really need to keep in there. And I don't like to use the word budget, because that sounds like FU to my ADHD brain. I look at things as like my wealth generation system. And so that's the language I use, and that's the way it helped me be able to understand. And now I get excited because I'm like, "Ooh, I'm generating wealth, baby." Not, I got a budget. Ugh. So build your wealth generation system. Get after it. Have somebody that can give you third-party correspondence, and then start educating yourself. Because based on how our brain is wired, what we focus on will grow. If I'm focused on wealth generation, guess what's going to happen? Byproduct of it, I'm going to generate wealth. And that's kind of the objective I have for you. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, or things going on, you can always hit me up in my DMs. Let's have a conversation about it. So stay hungry, stay humble, and stay grateful, my friends. Cheers.